I like to think of putting music projects out as like a snapshot of your journey. And so, if you just sit on it for a long time, you kind of like grow apart from the project because your interests change, your musical tastes change, but the project's still sitting there. Okay, what was the first cell phone you had?
It was a probably one of those old like T-Mobile flip phones or something, probably.
Okay. So my grandma had like an old Nokia. That was the first cell phone I remember experiencing, probably like late elementary school. And we would always steal it. My sister and I would always steal it and play Snake on it. But the reason I'm asking is I found this mobile phone museum, and it is basically just a site that is documenting all of the cell phones throughout the years.
Mhm.
And so it's like half nostalgia, half like tech history, and it is pretty interesting. You got the BlackBerry with the keypad, you got the slider phones, you got the flip phones,
Yeah, those
and
Blackberries were hot for a minute. That's what
right,
everyone
right.
everyone wanted one of those.
And some we're kind of like going back to that a little bit because there are like phone companies now that come out with a a phone that you like can't download apps on, and it's
Mhm.
supposed to be like a dopamine limiting phone. And so you would just swap your SIM card, and then I think you can only like make calls and texts and listen to music on it, and that's it.
Oh wow.
So people are like basically becoming so distracted with your iPhone in your pocket
Mhm.
that they're trying to find ways to like opt out.
Yeah. Do you have an iPhone?
No, I have a Samsung Galaxy.
I can't talk to you. No, so anyway,
This podcast's over.
yeah, the podcast is over. Well, there's this new feature on the iPhone, like whatever is the newest uh iOS update on here. But
Uh-huh.
there's this new like do not disturb feature on here where you can have it to where there's like different ones like for do not disturb where you get no notifications. And then there's some where it's like a work do not disturb, and you can have it to where maybe you only can get notified for maybe like if your wife shoots you a text,
Got
like
it.
something important, or if you don't want certain apps to not bug you, or if you want it to be like a social media one, I think you can use that one to where you can select specific apps. So if it's like Instagram, Facebook, you're like, I don't want to get anything, you just select that one, but everything else comes through. Pretty
Okay.
handy.
Yeah, that's
Really
nice.
cool feature, actually. I was actually using it. I set one up for work so that way, like, if my girlfriend shoots me a text or something, like, something like that will come through. But any other calls or, apps and stuff like that, because yeah, it's like seeing that go off all the time. It's just, yeah, it could be very distracting. So it's a
Yeah,
good one.
Android has like a similar program that you can limit your notifications really easily. But one of the guys I follow, he posted his screen time for the week, and it
Mhm.
was an average of 17 hours a day. And he was like, "Is this good or
Like, do
just
I need help or am I crushing
right?
it?
This is part of my job."
Yeah.
So yeah, the mobile phone museum kind of brought me back to elementary school. That was fun. Uh, they don't make games like they used to or whatever. Did you see that Spotify is creating a super app?
I think I saw something about Spotify and AI or something, but
Yeah.
it was like real quick. And then later on that day I saw this I guess like meme kind of thing that Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater posted, and it was like this guy makes $3.8 billion a year, has made zero music, and makes a living basically off of musicians and pays them nothing,
Oh
basically.
yeah. So it's like a hit piece.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, I mean,
Shots
he's not
fired.
lying,
Yeah.
but it's like there's always going to be someone who's going to be like, well, there's this open, no one's doing this,
Yeah. Well, the
despite,
suits have always been ripping off the artists. It's just
yes.
the suits have changed to tech bros now. So Spotify launched a bunch of video features. They've been like working really hard on getting podcasts and audiobooks going. They've been acquiring companies. So they're adding lyrics, like real time, they're adding music videos, and they're adding video podcasts. And a
Huh.
lot of that was like based on the success of their
Joe
big
Rogan.
podcasters like Rogan. Exactly. Spotify reported that users are more likely to stream, share, and save tracks with an interactive video background rather than static album art. And you see the same thing with like YouTube music, lots of music videos there too.
Hmm.
So they are basically trying to compete with all of the other video platforms, TikTok, YouTube, etc.
Hmm.
And then Apple and Spotify revealed 2021's most streamed songs. Olivia Rodrigo took the top spot in the UK with her punk pop anthem "Good for You." I don't know if you've heard that song, but there was like a bunch of
I've
controversy.
no, I've heard the name. I have never listened to her music.
So it sounds very similar to Paramore, one of the Paramore hits of the mid 2000s. And
Oh, was
so
there
people,
copyright stuff going on?
it wasn't sampling, but it was just like very similar melody and chords.
Um,
And Haley Williams ended up getting writing credit on the song
oh wow,
because it was that similar.
nice. It's like when Joe Satriani got money from Coldplay. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, what song was that? Do you remember?
Oh man, I can't remember. Yeah, there was
He was
a
like, "This sounds familiar."
well, because Joe Satriani's a theory guy and he teaches
Yeah,
music. So
totally.
he knows that stuff. Like if you start taking some chord progression that he did and even using like chord inversions, like he was like, and he was, probably like hearing that on the radio all the time because at one point Coldplay was everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and he was just like, hey, actually, blah 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 blah. Like went in there, like broke down everything, and they're like, okay, all right, here you go, payday. But it's kind of tough these days, man. It's like it's only 12 notes,
Yeah, to get to be
and
original.
yeah.
Um, you've seen the whole thing with Taylor Swift re-recording her albums.
Mm-mm.
So basically, her previous masters, like of Fearless, and like all seven of her first seven albums, are owned by someone else,
Oh wow.
and it's by someone that she doesn't like very much. And
Mm-hmm.
so she just said, I'm going to start re-recording these albums and with my own, like, basically independently,
Mm-hmm.
with my own label. And then she's just putting in like in parentheses Taylor's version on all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's Fearless, Taylor's version, and now there's Red, Taylor's version. And these songs are getting like more playtime than the originals were.
Mm-hmm.
So she's trying to keep it almost exactly the same. It's just the vocals are new. I mean, everything's being re-recorded, but
Mm-hmm.
she's trying to keep it very similar to the original records. But now she owns the masters if she wants to put it in movies or TV, anything like that. The Wall Street Journal
Interesting.
did a short article about it and said Taylor Swift's re-recording of Red is reshaping the music industry. The artist's new recordings, including her 2012 hit album Red, underscores why the world's largest music company has revamped record deals to block artists from re-recording their music. So they watched her do this, and it wasn't, illegal up to this point. And now they're like, okay, we're going to have to start signing contracts that say you can't re-record your music for like 7 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So just a couple weeks ago, she released the latest batch of re-recordings, a new version of Red, and she's already done Fearless and maybe one other album as well. But they're like hitting really huge.
Mm-hmm.
So recording nearly identical covers of her early albums is the latest step in Miss Swift's long legal tussle to control her back catalog and musical legacy. In its recent agreements, Universal has been effectively doubling the amount of time the contracts restrict an artist from re-recording their work.
Wow.
So she is changing the music industry just by what she's doing. Uh, and it says, what Taylor did is a game changer, not just for her fans, but for other artists. She is inspiring artists to re-record their songs and control their music.
Wow, that's a interesting thought. I mean, how does that still work as far as copyright strikes on other places, like if if it's very similar.
That is a
Like
good question. I
I wonder
don't.
how that works.
Yeah, I don't exactly know.
Yeah, because I would think, even if like let's say you're, because this is something that's happened to me,
Yeah,
doing, covers or like remixes of songs that I've already recorded, but it's different drums, it's different guitar tones and stuff. Even if there's no vocals, it'll still pick it up under the label that released it.
right.
So yeah, I wonder how that goes.
I'm sure it's messy. It says
Yeah.
80% of the streaming revenue is usually taken by a label, and 20% goes to the artist. And when artists own their own masters, they keep around 80 to 95% instead of the label getting 80%.
Hmm.
Uh, one of the guys I follow, he posted his Spotify Wrapped. It was like a parody, and he said, if Spotify was my only income, I would qualify for food stamps. Like basically, this is not a good way to make a living.
What was it was he getting a lot of streams and stuff, or
Yeah, you're getting plenty of streams, but they pay like half a penny or even less
yeah, it was
per
like point
stream.
point zero zero,
Four, zero
yeah,
zero
something
four,
like that.
0004.
Yeah.
Streaming data show that enthusiasm around new releases from Taylor has benefited her entire catalog, including her old recordings, which is true because when she did Fearless, I listened to, the original song and then listened to the new one just to hear kind of the
Hmm.
differences, if I could hear the differences between them.
Was it
While
better?
this different, like she sounds way younger on her original record because she was like 16 or 8
Uh,
or 18, and now she's 32 or something.
hmm.
um Wildest Dreams Taylor's version went viral on TikTok and has been used in nearly 70,000 videos.
Wow.
And Taylor is encouraging fans to use Taylor's version of everything, of course. And
Yeah,
once the contract runs out, like the label will no longer own her old masters either, and they won't be able to like make any money off of that back catalog.
that's crazy. Yeah, and I mean, especially if since she has a lot of dedicated fans, I'm sure if she goes out there and says, "Hey, you know,
Right,
listen to these instead," everyone's gonna do it. So
right. What did you end up getting for Thanksgiving sale, Black Friday madness?
Black Friday, Black Friday. Actually, not much. This is funny as like as time goes on, I don't get so like, oh man, I think at this point I'm pretty content with what I have. I mean, of course, like there's always, certain upgrades that you would like to get.
You're content with
Um,
the Omega bundle?
yes.
Nice.
No,
That's enough samples.
I think the only things that I got some Kemper profiles. I got the two Madsen Kemper profiles. It was
Oh,
like
cool.
50% off, so it was super cheap. I was like, well, yeah, a bunch of cool like high gain tones and stuff, and then just got some shirts. There's this company that I like called Paul Bearer Press. They have
Oh,
like a
okay.
lot of cool like movie shirts and stuff, and like super like comfy material. And they were having a bunch of Black Friday sales, so I was like, oh, cool. But nothing really that much. I mean, I think that was pretty much it. Like this year was pretty chill. I think there was some other stuff I was looking at, but I was like, yeah, like I was looking at some like SSD drives and stuff, but they were like still not really that much cheaper. So I was just like, yeah. But
Yeah,
what about you?
wait it out. I got the color and character bundle from Aberrant DSP, I think is what it's called. It's like two brothers. They look like they're 20 years old.
Oh yeah, yeah. You were showing me those a little bit. They were kind
Yeah,
of kind of like old
they
school
have a cassette
retro
tape
kind of, yeah.
and a like a shifter compressor.
Hmm.
Um, and they're making cool stuff over there, so I'm happy to support them. And then I got the pro version of Vital, which
Mm.
is a like freemium synth. It's by Matt Titel, and he did Helm, which was like an open source free synth a while back that was like really popular, and now this is his new project Vital, but
Nice.
he matched all of the payments for the pro version and then donated it to a like tech education charity that teaches like underprivileged children coding and specifically like music software stuff. So it was a
That's
good
cool.
cause, and it's a great synth. It has like a unlimited text to wavetable stuff. So I put Soundiron in there and I was making it speak. But,
Yeah, I remember that. It's like sound iron,
right.
sound iron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you drag in samples on the free version? Or is that only
Uh,
for the pro version?
so there's no sample import. It's just wavetables. So like
Oh,
you can like I literally just typed sound iron and then it spoke it.
can you control like how long it says each text phrase and all that stuff?
Yeah, you can manipulate it. There's there's plenty of knobs to turn.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun.
Yeah, I was messing
Um,
around a little bit with the free version, uh, just kind of real quick, but yeah, it seemed cool. Free synth, can't go wrong with that.
exactly. And then Christmas is coming, so there's free drum machine samples from Music Radar to kick off like their 25 days of Christmas music stuff. And then I
Nice.
also found a dirty spring reverb freebie from Bedroom Producer Blog. It is called the BDB Dirty Spring. Um, but we also have our own Christmas thing happening.
Oh yeah.
So we recently came out with Desk Bell, which is a free library made for the full version of Contact. And we are doing a competition basically involving composing a cue using just Desk Bell.
Hmm.
So there's like half a gig worth of samples and then a 4-layer modular template. And you can basically just let your imagination run wild and create something interesting.
Yeah, because yeah, there's a lot of competitions where and we've done these in the past where you can use maybe some free, like I think we had some free like soundscapes or ambiances, and then use them with other instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But this time we wanted to see really kind of like pigeonhole people into like focusing on using just these sounds, just to see the creativity of what you can do. I mean, because you do a lot of composing videos. Usually, very seldomly do you ever use like an additional one, and if you do, it's usually like for percussion, or something
Right,
like that.
right.
But for the most part, all of yours are using just the library, and that's only just one person's take on it. So really curious to see what people do with the library, especially because there's no limit on style.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's 25 days of composing competition doesn't limit it to winter stuff, because all of them would probably sound the same. So it's
Yeah.
really a matter of like creativity, originality, of course, production value, stuff like that, because there's a lot of aspects that go into music production, especially if you're trying to be a composer. Like production value is probably in one of the like top three things, like, you know, good composition, not just ripping somebody off, something original. You can't just like take a song you've already done, sprinkle in a couple desk bell samples and call it a day. So, you have to
And no
create something.
everlasting 10-minute loops either. I don't want to sit there and listen to 10-minute loops.
Yeah, 1 to 2 minutes, like that is a perfect amount of time to really, if you can come up with something 1 to 2 minutes, something that's catchy and sounds good, like that's, most jingle writers probably do stuff that's like 15 to 30 seconds, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing's got to be like catchy, sound awesome, like boom. So I mean, a
Got to be
minute to
stuck
two
inside your
minutes,
head.
yeah, because most of our demos, for all of our products usually range anywhere from minute to a minute and a half to 2 minutes or something like that. So between a minute and 2 minutes should be, enough time to work something out. But yeah, you have until December 25th of this year. Basically, all submissions have to be entered before midnight PST, and then we'll have a few days to judge it. We'll announce the winner after the new year. But yeah,
And
should be cool.
we're giving some sweet store credit. First place gets $500 store credit to soundiron.com.
Mm-hmm.
Gets you halfway to the Omega bundle if that's what you want, or you could pretty much pick up the Contact Player bundle. There's plenty to get a hold of. Have you listened to the Silk Sonic album?
Mm-mm. Who's that?
So Silk Sonic is Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak coming together to make a 1970s throwback album, basically.
Interesting.
So it's their new little group, and you should definitely watch their music videos. They're straight out of the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
and they have choreography, matching outfits. The music sounds like Motown. It's
Nice.
really nice. It's definitely, I guess, contrived. Like, you don't know if they're being ironic and joking or not, because they're just like so over the top, but it's really smooth, great sounding music.
Yeah. Did they talk about how they recorded it at all, or did they use like any sort of like old school recording techniques or anything? Or
Yeah, so they got Bootsy Collins to host it, and he named them Silk Sonic. That was their, like, who gave them their title, and they used like a ton of analog gear, tried to play a lot of things live, and then they said like no auto tune,
mm-hmm.
and just trying to like go back in time 50 years basically.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be a fun process to be in some studio, some old school studio where like, all right, this is how we did it. They had all the tape machines and everything there. Like that'd be kind of cool because I love that stuff. I love the sound of those like old, even like even like early, was it like the old classic like silent film era stuff, like just like
Sure.
like how like the old like golden era stuff sounds like. I love that kind of stuff. It's
Sounds just like that, like crunchy tape stuff.
Yeah, because I feel like nowadays it's never been easier to get like a clean modern sounding production even from home,
Sure.
but to really nail that sound, that old kind of real tape sound, that's something that's not as easy, I think.
It's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
you can like emulate it with with certain plugins, but to really have that kind of sound, it's definitely not as easy.
Yeah. So speaking of back in the day, I've been watching the Beatles Get Back documentary on Disney Plus. Do you know anything about that?
Mm, I, I think I saw something about that on Disney Plus. The only thing I was watching on Disney Plus was Hawkeye.
You're like, Disney Plus is for children.
No, Disney
Yeah.
Plus has Marvel stuff, and that's the stuff I like.
Right. Nice.
So yeah.
So Peter Jackson of the Lord of the Rings, uh, you know, epics.
Oh yeah, he sold
He
his studio, right?
he did. Yeah.
Or
But
his FX
he
studio.
cut together an 8-hour documentary of basically 2 weeks leading up to this big live performance that the Beatles were working toward in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically, they were huge, and they were like on the verge of breaking up. And so both John Lennon and Paul McCartney were getting married that year, and so like the fans hated their future wives, and so they're rehearsing this show that they're 2 weeks before the show, and they're writing the songs. So like they don't have the songs, they want to play all new songs,
Mm-hmm.
and they like are coming together and trying to write like an hour and a half, 90 minutes of new music.
Oh wow.
And it's just like showing all these behind the scenes of them being stressed out, and they're like fighting, but they're like politely fighting because they're British.
Mm-hmm.
And then like on the end of part one, George Harrison is just like, I'm leaving the Beatles, and he just walks out. And he like wrote in his diary like that day, he was like, ate lunch, left the Beatles. And
Sat my guitar down, left. Never
exactly.
looked back.
And they were just like, I guess we should talk to George about why he's leaving, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, if you're a fan at all of like writing music, composing, the Beatles, Peter Jackson, it's definitely worth watching.
Sounds interesting.
It is 8 hours long, so you gotta buckle up. But just watching them work, it's a lot of just sitting there kind of jam banding it, and
Mm-hmm.
then like kind of muttering. It's a lot of like muttering and just
Mm-hmm.
like puttering around with like humming and whistling, and then lyrics just pop up and you're like, I know that song. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's definitely worth checking out. It's a lot of fun.
It's funny. That's like how most musicians are. Like, grab a guitar. Maybe for them it's probably like acoustic guitars or something like that, and they're just like strumming a G chord, just trying to like find a melody, just like
Mm-hmm.
playing around with it. It's like that's how most of it is. It's just like you're not sitting there like, I mean, unless you're like some just badass. But for most of us mere mortals, it's usually just like dicking around on some chord and just
Yeah.
kind of trying to like figure something out or just like stumble on some melody or something. But even for the greats like the Beatles, it's the same thing. So
Quincy Jones did a GQ interview, and he is 84 years old. So he got to experience the Beatles mania, and he has a pretty crazy story. He talks about when he was 7 years old, he would have to go catch rats in the alleyway, and so that his mom could cook them, and
oh
they would eat them.
wow.
Yeah, and he talks about like working with Frank Sinatra and like writing "Fly Me to the Moon" and just like these crazy stories of his life. And he's 84 years old. So at the end
Oh
of this
wow.
article, uh, he says like Quincy Jones is about to do some Sudoku before bed. He says Sudoku keeps dementia and Parkinson's away. He said, I'm fighting that like a warrior, got to challenge the
Hmm.
brain, use it or lose it. And he said that he loves midnight, and because that's that's when something new begins. He says the muses come out at midnight. No emails, no faxes, no calls, and when the rest of the city is fully asleep, that's when Quincy Jones, 3 months short of his 85th birthday, will really get to work. He says, I'll write music. I'm writing a street opera for my album right now. Finally, at around 10 in the morning, Jones will go to sleep. He says, life's an amazing journey. Every day I think about it, it's just something else. I love every step. And he talks about all the birthday tributes in the works, like a biopic. He's got a Netflix documentary and a TV special coming out. And he says, it's insane. They be thinking I'm 84 and retired. They wrong, man. I'm never retiring.
uh
And so, I love that. Like John Williams and Quincy Jones, these like living legends, and they're still writing music.
yeah.
It's not like shoveling coal or something. It's not like something you have to retire from when you get old.
Yeah, I like the idea of like the Sudoku or doing like kind of like brain puzzle games. In that uh was it My First Million podcast where they were talking to Rob Dyrdek.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the things, for anyone, who hasn't seen that, they should watch that podcast because that was awesome. But there was the one thing where he was like, hey man, I like to play brain games and puzzle games. It keeps my
Yeah.
mind sharp. It's just like amongst doing all these other things of like businesses and starting stuff and startups and all this crazy stuff, still finding time. Like there was one that I got a while back. I think it's called like Luminosity or something like that.
Hmm.
And they have some cool puzzles on there. And it's funny, my girlfriend always plays those kind of games where she has this one where it's like you fill up vials. Like there's like 7 or 8 vials, and like in each vial there's like different colors. And
Okay.
the whole goal is to try and like get each vial to have the same color. So it's kind of like liquid Rubik's Cube or something. It's pretty interesting, but yeah, it's a pretty cool one.
Keeps you sharp,
Yeah, it keeps you sharp. You got to do other stuff to keep the mind going too.
like write music.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was telling you, it is I was, in a little bit of a creativity funk. I know we've talked about this on the podcast, but sometimes even though you have plenty of ways of trying to get out of writer's block or something, like it's just like working out, man. You got to like do that stuff all the time, or else you kind of like not forget how to do it, but you kind of like lose your rhythm. It's like going to the gym,
Hmm.
but for your musical mind, you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta
It's
stay up
it's the
on it.
difference of like being cold
Hmm.
and like not kind of being groggy in the morning and trying to do something difficult like physically, versus being like warm and, in the studio with your friends playing
Yeah.
music, and you guys are like ready for creativity to strike.
Sometimes I know we've talked about this too, where like you forget what plugins you have. Like, what was that plugin that I used for this thing?
Right.
Like, because I'm one of those people, like, if my mind starts to like go cold a little bit, it I almost like forget, even though if I've used it so many times, like, wait, what was it again? So it's like I have to like stay in this kind of rhythm of just like forward movement.
Totally.
But yeah, it's like as you're kind of going along, you're like, oh, remember this. Oh, and then like little things kick in. Oh, what if you try this? Or maybe try using this plugin you haven't really used. Like I remember we were talking about those I was mentioning that kilohertz plugin that
Hmm.
has like the cool like transgate stuff. Like I used that on a recent demo for a library that's going to be coming out soon. And it helps kind of give it that sort of electronic stuttery vibe to it. And I was like, oh yeah, so like little, it's like those little things that kind of pop into your head as you're working on something. Then you kind of start to kind of, oh, all right, calm down a little bit and just kind of get in the flow of working on stuff. So that's really what it is. It's like getting into that flow state. That's the hardest part. Just
Yeah.
going in like, all right, it's like walking in the gym. All right, what machine am I going to use? I'm not really sure. I don't know. Should I do this today? Should I do arm? I don't, it's like you gotta like just go in, grab some weights, start doing something just to kind of like get
Loosen
everything
up.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a while back, I was asking you when we were talking about, how we work, or like, how, do you usually work a lot? Because I know like we all tend to kind of like, we love our jobs. So it's easy to just kind of work all day.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, like, do you usually just end up wanting to sit in the studio all day? And you showed me this article called Reclaiming the Joy of Work, and I thought was really interesting because it was basically like what I was asking you about. And there's a few things that I took away. I copied and pasted some stuff from it because I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. Like
Nice.
some of the quotes was like, an idea I occasionally hear some form of is you need to learn to slow down, or you can't let yourself be defined by your work. Or if you removed your job, who would you be? Just stuff like that. It's like when you think about it, it's like, if I wasn't doing all this stuff, like, you know, do like, what am I like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
You find your identity in that.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a lot of people that find that too, like with like, especially musicians. Like it's funny, like even like for me, like I got long hair, I played in metal bands and stuff, but it's like, I don't go like claiming like I'm a metalhead. It's just like, it should be the same way with your work. It's just like, it doesn't define you. It's just like, it's what you like to do. And
Hmm.
they're saying, when I think about work, I think about making progress towards a meaningful goal. Raising a child is work, practicing soccer is work, growing a business is work. I'm not sure anyone would say you should try to spend less time raising your child or practicing your hobbies. So why do we say you shouldn't define yourself by your work or should spend less time working? And like the thing I really liked about that was like the whole like making progress towards a meaningful goal. Like that
Yeah.
right there is like a very important thing that resonated with me, because it's like, and it's funny. I was watching that movie, is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings,
Uh-huh.
and there was this one part in it that I thought was really cool. And like, I don't know if it really stuck out to most other people, but for me it kind of was like, ooh, it was a, there's these parts where they're showing, these, archers, practicing archery and stuff. And, she was like, if you don't have a target, how are you going to hit anything? And I was just like, boom, like, that's like life, you know, message, it's like
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
You got to have a focus.
Yeah. And it's, and the meaningful goal thing. Cause like when you think about it, like when it comes to work, if you're just kind of like chipping away at stuff you don't really care about, well, then it's like, that's when it kind of becomes work, you know? Like when you hear people like Steve Vai say, when you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, even though they'll still tell you, you got to do the work.
Sure.
But it's like the whole meaningful goal thing. It's like when like, or even like, with you working on Quadrille, your artist library, like that's, the goal is like, I have this idea for this thing. I think it's going to be really cool. And it like kind of like drives you and motivates you to work on it. It's not just like, all right, I got to make these ambiances. I got to do,
Yeah.
it's like, you don't even really think about it. So it's kind of like, I thought that was really interesting.
I like that. I had a professor who would always say, I play the gig for free. You're paying me to drive there and back.
Hmm.
And he was just talking about like the parts of the work that you don't enjoy. That's the part that you want money for, because there are parts of your job hopefully that you love doing.
Yeah, it's funny, especially the whole touring thing.
Hmm.
You know, the 30 minutes or 45 minutes or hour or however long you get to play, that's the funnest part. You
Right.
know, driving to the place, van breaking down, worrying about if you're going to get to the gig or not, getting
Yeah.
there late, having a tour manager, crack the whip on you,
Hmm.
struggling to get all your stuff up, and then it's like, all right, that's the fun part, and then you got to break it down, put everything
It's
back in the
over.
trailer. Not
Find a
over.
place to
Then you got
sleep.
to sell. Then you got to sell merch, pack up all the merch,
Hmm.
go sleep in a van, make sure you face away from the sun raising in the morning, stuff like that. Like that's what they're paying you for. And most of the time when you're touring early on, you're not getting paid much. So that's where
Right.
it's like, yeah, that's where you do it because you love it.
Yeah. So this article says it's partially because many people's work is not making progress toward a meaningful goal. It's a shame to spend an unnecessary amount of time on your job at the expense of more meaningful things.
Hmm.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Real world problems are not about producing the highest quality products in all walks of life. The goal is to hit a quality target with minimum effort. That's another one that I thought was pretty cool. It's like, and this makes me think of like when I first started working for Soundiron, and just like talking with Mike and Greg and you guys, and just like how to like automate the process or find ways of speeding up workflow, like because they're so like, you know, key commands like out the wazoo, and just finding ways to kind of like up your productivity level and stuff. And that's something, the more you can kind of like bang out and kind of make stuff quicker,
Hmm.
that's another thing that'll kind of make some of the things that you have to do not as like kind of draining on the mind sort of thing.
Totally.
But yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool article, for anyone who, maybe they just feel like they're working nonstop and just start to kind of feel like, ugh, you
Burnt
know,
out.
yeah, yeah. Or it's funny because like I meet people sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, you must work like 24/7." But it's like the older you get, you start trying to like balance, the whole work life balance thing. And especially when you work from home, it's like, where do you find that balance of like, well, I can just go up, go upstairs real quick and just, tweak this thing. Or it's like, you got to learn how to like set a schedule and like shut it off. Like, all right, I'm done. I'll come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Time management and productivity management is definitely important.
Yeah.
You're only a couple steps away from the office.
Yeah, it's a blessing and can be a curse. Especially, it's funny. Like, I remember when I first was doing like home studio stuff, man. It was like you couldn't keep me away. I would just want to
Right.
like, I'd like watch some video in the other room, like, oh, I want to go try that real quick, and then you go in, load up a session. You're like doing like EQ moves on a kick drum or something, and you're like trying to, you know, get it all get it all going.
Totally. And that's what he says in this article. This is Nat Eleison. He says, work essentially comes in two forms: work that is not meaningful to you and thus should be completed to the minimum acceptable threshold with the least energy possible, and work that is very meaningful to you, in which case you should pour your heart and soul into it.
Hmm.
He does have a caveat. He says, even if you write for the love of writing, you eventually have to stop editing and call it finished.
Hmm.
And that's what we were talking about a couple episodes ago about shipping things. Gotta
Yeah,
eventually it has to be done. You can come back to it, but it's gotta be it's gotta be complete. You gotta share it.
yeah. Especially when you're, I think, working on music, because I think for most of us, you work on an album or something, you listen to it, maybe a year later, you're like, oh, it's still pretty cool. I dig it. Maybe 2 years, you're like, oh, it's all right. I don't love it as much. And then 3 years go by, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? I need to write something else. Like, so it's like over time, even if it's like stuff that you've written, like, yeah, you would just be like basically rehashing material you already did. So it's like at some point, like you said, you got to just call it a day on it. I
Mhm.
mean, there is always room for improvement, but at some point, yeah, you got to ship it.
I like to think of putting music projects out as like a snapshot of your journey. And so, if you just sit on it for a long time, you kind of like grow apart from the project because like, your interests change, your musical tastes change, but the project's still sitting there. And so if you can just release the project when you're still in that phase, that's the best time to do it, when everything's kind of fitting together. And then you can come back to it
Mm-hmm.
as like a piece of history or like a picture that you look back, like a photograph, and you go, oh yeah, I remember that Christmas I was depressed about this, and like I wrote this song for this reason. You know what I
Why,
mean?
why are
So
you why are you depressed on Christmas?
I'm the Grinch.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great analogy because it really is. It's like taking a picture of yourself and then like posting it on Facebook 3 years later when you look totally different.
Right.
You don't really connect with it versus like, this was what I was doing at this time. It really is the same way, especially like if you wrote a piece of music while you were traveling. You're like, oh, I remember that because I was in my grandpa's basement and I loved hanging out with my grandpa, and it was just like a special thing. But I think for writing music, yeah, that's a great analogy.
Did you look at typatone.com?
No, no, what's
So
that?
there's a site called typatone.com, and it basically has assigned all of these notes, like pitches, to keys. So like keyboard keys.
Hmm.
So you can type like letters and numbers on your phone, and then you can have it play you a song. So like I'll just type uh Craig
Oh,
is
here we go.
cool,
No.
dude, exclamation. And then
40 exclamation points.
I will play the song. And we'll screen cap that so you can all see the glory. But that's called typatone.com. So that actually is a great like prompt. If you need just like a musical prompt, you could type like a long sentence about how annoyed you are that the mail is late or whatever, and
Hmm.
then it'll play you just like a variety of pitches, and you could start composing.
Oh wow. That's
Boom.
that's that's pretty interesting. I was gonna say that'd be a pretty interesting thing if you're like a YouTuber and you're trying to come up with some kind of like intro jingle or something for your thing. Just like type in like the name of your channel or what it's about or something and see what kind of music you get, and then write some thing for it or something like that. It'd be like an interesting way of maybe getting some kind of intro music or jingle or something. That'd be
Yeah,
kind of
you could definitely make a jingle or like a little, just like a little intro, like dee doo doo, 3 note, 4 note
hmm.
kind of intro.
Yeah, I remember there's this guitar player named Ron Jarzenbeck. He's this like super badass guitarist and just kind of like forward thinking musician. Like even if you take away the fact that he writes, progressive metal stuff,
Sure.
because his music's like super complex. Like he'll write these pieces of music, like scoring like a scene from like King Kong or something. And he'll like score like and it'll all go with like the scene.
Okay.
But he came up with this app where you type in certain phrases and it'll play like a sort of like blotted science Ron Jarzenbeck kind of thing. So you could be like, hey, Nathan is cool. And it'd be like, it's like, it basically is like this kind of like music generator thing, but sort of like in his style.
Nice.
Cause he has this like really crazy way of writing music. Like instead of like the circle of fifths, he almost like turned it into this like, can't remember what he called it. This kind of like tone row, almost like tone row meets circle of fifths. It's this crazy thing that he came up with. But
It's like serialism almost. Like, is it like atonal stuff?
I mean, it's very like it's like serialism in a way that like the music doesn't really fit into any sort of specific key, or
Okay.
like it sounds almost like not necessarily just like random chromatic notes or something, but it's just this weird way that he came up with it. But yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, but in a little bit more of like a metal way. That was pretty funny.
Yeah,
It's
you'll have to send that to me.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Something I found this week was the Google AI Magenta Studio, and they made a bunch of free music plugins back in 2017. And knowing Google, they probably abandoned it by now. But it was like a hardware synth that you could build, and then they also had a bunch of software. So I downloaded it all, and I've been kind of just like tinkering with the sounds. It's like a lot of synth shapes, and it's all generated with machine learning. So Google is dipping their toe, or was dipping their toe into making music with AI.
Everyone's getting on that AI train.
Got to. So they have like, I want to say 5 different plugins. So they have a generate plugin, and like the generate plugin will, you set a few like terms, and then it will generate 4 bars of MIDI for you. So then you could load in like a Soundiron library, like Apocalypse Elements, and it would play you these 4 bars that have been generated from Magenta Studio. So that's another way to kind of have a prompt. I really like prompts, like ways to start composing that are kind of chaos based or randomized. I love randomized buttons. So I thought this was interesting. I'm going to kind of start poking around a little bit more at these plugins.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's like any kind of way to like get stuff moving. That's not, I mean, because I think when most people think of music generated by AI, they think it's pretty like basic, or it's just using some sort of basic theory, to where it's going to sound like generic or something.
Right.
But I like the idea of stuff like what you were mentioning, that like the type of tone thing, or even like, I don't know if like there's a lot of people that do this too, but like Morse code. Have you ever
Yeah.
experimented with like Morse code stuff for like percussive?
Not for music.
Yeah,
That's fun.
but yeah, like you can think of some phrase, or maybe you're writing a song and you have like a certain amount of like a certain lyrics or something.
Uh-huh.
you know, Taking those lyrics, typing them in, and like beat deet 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 deet. Even if you're doing, especially if you're doing like prog stuff, because
Yeah.
all that stuff is odd time anyway. So it'd be like 5, 7, 3, 2, 5. So you could
And
take those rhythms and then make some kind of piece of music, or like or even just using a piece of it, or just there's some part of it that you could take that just like one section, loop it, so you don't necessarily need to use the entire thing. But the idea of using Morse code is a way of kind of coming up with like rhythmic stuff. I think is pretty interesting. It's something that I always kind of like forget about until it pops into my head.
yeah.
So that's like a cool thing.
And then you could use the desk bell samples and start your composition.
Boom, there we go. The whole
Free.
everything you need to do a composition is right there. I don't know
Full
how great
circle.
it'll be, but samples will sound good.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hear about I read about this the other day. Did you hear about that girl who swallowed her AirPods?
Oh no.
So I guess she thought she was like taking some medication or something. She straight up swallowed her AirPods
Oh
and
no.
sent like a voice memo to somebody through her stomach.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, I couldn't find the actual like I was trying to find the sound.
The recording, yeah.
Yeah, the recording, and I guess it was just like really loud and kind of like what is going on. But I was like, man, that's something that would be interesting to sample.
I bet it's wet sounding.
It probably, I mean, dude, you'd probably get some wild sound design from that. Imagine like taking all that. That should be our next sick library. We just like just swallow some earbuds, just record, just like set to record, swallow them, record it.
Our next flatulence library.
No, that one I'll have to ask Greg about. Greg is the flatulence master.
Let's see. One of the last things is my buddy Nick True runs a YouTube channel and website called Mapped Out Money. And he did a video on how to buy the perfect gift. And he talks about like basically breaking gifts up into categories, and
Hmm.
it's really good from like a financial perspective, how to give like a great gift to someone. And one of the things is like a lot of the times when you buy a gift for somebody, you are buying it for yourself a little bit to like watch them open it, like to get the joy of like,
You're living
like
vicariously
yeah,
through
yeah.
their opening movements just to
And so
see. Yeah.
exactly. So most gifts are kind of bought for the giver rather than the person receiving the gift. And so
Mm,
if you can find a gift that the person receiving actually wants, like something that's in their hobbies, something
mhm,
for comfort, something practical, or just like a gift card, those are the gifts that they actually would appreciate. And like while it's not as fun for you to watch them open up a gift card, they
mhm.
actually, those are the gifts that are like better for them. And
Yeah.
then he also talks about going, basically taking like a cheap category and going expensive or like premium or high end with that category. So his example was like socks. So typically people, you know, would scoff at paying like more than a couple bucks for a pair of socks,
Mhm.
but there are like these cashmere socks that are like 15 or $20. And if you bought, like, you probably wouldn't buy that for yourself, but you could buy that for someone else. And it's like this premium, really nice feeling sock. And it's like a great gift for someone else that they wouldn't buy for themselves. So it's like going premium or going expensive in a
Mhm.
cheap category. And I found a similar thing with nail clippers this week.
Oh, yeah?
So you know, you typically you get like dollar store nail clippers, but I
Mhm.
went on Amazon. Of course, Amazon has like thousands of options, but
Mhm.
there's these Japanese nail clippers that are $18, and they say like it's the last pair you'll ever need, and like your nails will be perfect from here on out, you know. But it's $18. Is it 18 times more good than the dollar store one?
Yeah. But the thing
I'm gonna
is,
find out.
how many times do people buy dollar, $2 items and just lose them? You
Sure.
spend $18 on some nail clippers, you're going to keep those in like a very nice case in your drawer in the bottom right
Right.
side. You're like, don't lose my $18 nail clippers. And they probably have like, I don't know, if like, are the blades like supposed to be like super just take
Yeah.
everything off?
For thick nails. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I need.
Boom.
I need to get me
So
some
yeah,
$18 nail
so
clippers.
that's like the tip is like buy something that the person receiving the gift would really appreciate, and then go premium in a cheap category if you're on a budget.
Interesting.
Don't get them a Rolex, because you'll probably get them the wrong Rolex, and you'll probably not be able to afford the nicest Rolex. Get them
Yeah.
something expensive in a cheap category.
Yeah, that's always the thing sometimes, like, especially I think for probably people like you and me, you know, the significant others like, oh, I want to get you something, but it's just like what we're into is so like, unless you're
Niche.
in, yeah, unless you're into it, it's like, how do you know, like, oh, I want to get I want to get some new studio monitors. And they're like, oh, well, what kind? And it's like, you don't want to say, you're like, oh, actually, I was looking at these, Amphions, they're like $4,000,
Right.
even though you don't necessarily need them. You're just like, well, I mean, and then there's like, no, everything you want is, it's too expensive. I remember when I was wanting to get a pull cue, uh, my girlfriend was just like, I don't know what you want, or like I think she like snuck it out of me. She was like, oh, well, if you were to get a pull cue, like, like what would you get? Oh, there's this player's cue, thinking about getting like a medium Kamui tip, like most people aren't going to know those sort of, specifics.
Right, right. That's very niche inside the hobby.
Yeah, because then you just say, "Oh, I want a pull cue," and then they get you some pull cue, and you're like, "Oh, I mean, this is cool, but it's not." So
It's the
that's like,
wrong one. Yeah.
yeah. So that's another way too, just like sneak the details out of people. Especially if you're in a relationship with someone who's into like some kind of like music field or some other field that's very, like, because every field you can get pretty hardcore with,
Hmm. The
even if
rabbit
it's
hole.
like Cavassier or something, you know. Like
Sure.
I have friends who are like connoisseurs of like certain types of things, like, oh, well, there's this, it, came out in this year and this and that, and it's packaged like this, like like everything is so specific. You're just like, what? you know it can get pretty deep.
Well, This story was basically just to tell you that I'm getting you nail clippers for Christmas.
Nice. Or you can get me the with that neon sign that says hustle on the back. Please don't get me that.
YouTube channel star.
Yeah, give me a couple succulent plants, a neon light that says hustle, and they'll be the next biggest thing. Not
Ad.
yeah, insert
Sponsored
ad.
content.
Yeah, this podcast is sponsored by Nope. So, recommendations. I'm going to recommend the Two Madsen Camper Profile Pack because I don't know if it's still on sale, but honestly, for any of you who are looking for some cool high gain camper profiles, I recommend them. There's some really good ones in there, and it was pretty cheap. I think
It
with
slaps.
the 50% off, it was only like $24 or something.
Nice.
Steal basically.
And it gives you a bunch of like new amp tones and like
Yeah, it's like
design stuff.
Yeah, because this guy's worked on so many like big metal records, and dude knows how to get a guitar tone. And a lot of them are just mix ready. So you just, all right, I want maybe a rectifier sound, or like the main reason I got it because there's a lot of 5153 profiles, which I love. I'm a big fan of those. So there's a lot of those. He has his own chains and stuff like that. So really cool.
That sounds fun. My recommendation is Valhalla Supermassive just got a new update, and Vintage Verb got a new update, and they both have new modes. So Valhalla DSP is shipping, my favorite plugin company. And then the free drum machine samples, the spring reverb freebie. And then I also found this website called radio with 4Os.com. And it basically shows you a world map, and then you click on a country, and it will play you music from that country, and then you have a time stamp, so you can go back to 1900 in India, and you can listen to what the most popular music in India in 1900 was. Or if you want to go to like Kenya, Africa, and listen to what was popular in 1980, you can do that. So it's a really nice way to kind of stretch your ear and find some new music that you can kind of pick and choose ideas from. And I mean, most of the music worldwide, like I was not familiar with at all.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like a lot of like older like folk stuff, or I'd probably go back and like listen to a bunch of like early like gypsy jazz or something.
Nice. And then my last recommendation is go get Desk Bell and compose a cue in the next 20 days and submit it and get some store credit.
Yeah, you have until the 25th of December. And then also we just recently came out with Alto Xylophone, which is a new cool library. So definitely check that one out too. It's on intro price, and really cool. It's alto xylophone. There's 2 soprano xylophones in there. Bunch of cool sound design.
Get your wooden tuned percussion on.
Yeah. But yeah, 25 days of composing. You got until December 25th. If you don't win, you still get a cool free library to use, So to enter, basically what you're going to do is compose your track, upload it to SoundCloud, and then send us the link in the submission form that we have on the website. And then what you're going to do, and then we'll basically take all those tracks and put them in a playlist so everyone can listen to each other's submissions. So it'll be a cool way for people to hear your music. And yeah, looking forward to seeing all the submissions.
Definitely.
You're curious to see what different types of ways people utilize it, in their own creative way. Maybe sometime this month, be cool to do a live stream.
Nice.
Maybe writing something with Desk Bell. I don't think I got a chance to write a Desk Bell demo, so this will be kind of a fun way. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that about wraps up this podcast. Definitely check out all the links in the description, and follow us on Apple Podcasts and all the other podcast platforms out there. So
Spotify, building a super app.
Yep. Give some more money to that guy.
Daniel Ek, something like that is his name.
Fun fact, he's 3 times richer than Paul McCartney.
Oh, bringing the Beatles back in. Nice.
That's what we call the old what's that?
Full circle.
Full circle. All right. So until next time, thanks for watching. And Nathan, catch you later.
All right. Peace.